Hello, welcome to Hawk Speaker Series. My name is Lucas. I'm joined here with
My name's Trevor.
Vontasia Smith.
Johnny Fua.
Jose.
Anthony
Garcia.
Angel Marcano.
and we're here with Rafael, and he's president of DOF Ground.
Yeah.
And he's here to tell us about himself. So, explain how you started in the logistics industry and.
I'm actually, I came to Springs. I was in Springs in freshman year, sophomore year. So, I came to this school. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to go ahead and get involved with Nick and so on. So I graduated Springs, and then I went to Tech, went to college. I was a horrible student, horrible. And I graduated from accounting and then went into logistics. It's a long story, which I'm sure, you guys are gonna ask me a question. We're gonna get into it. But basically, we do trucking, rail, all modes of transportation. We do import, export. Some of the clients that we work with, we're at Exxon in Brazil. We supply oil projects in Panama, Mexico, Brazil. We do cross-border with Mexico for, General Mills, Johnson and Johnson, Anheuser-Busch, bunch of companies basically. So a lot of rail, especially right now, trucking market is collapsing. So right now we're doing mostly rail, and we just do logistics and a broad range of modes of transportation. I don't know, that covers it.
Okay, so if you can, you explain to us what your company does, but more how you got into it, what interests you about logistics, how.
Okay. I graduated from accounting, and 2 months after I graduated, yeah. So I'll go into, I know you wanted the long version. So I used to box, and one of the drills that we used to do in boxing is, go inside the ring. They'll give you the newspaper right before you go in. So we had to read an article, and while you're boxing, while you're sparring, they will ask you questions about what you read, and that was just to, speed of the mind, basically. That's what they were trying to teach you. And one of the articles that I read was the expansion of the Panama Canal and how the imports from China were going to start, instead of going to LA, they were going to start coming into Miami, and how the expansion of the port in Miami was going to, attract all that all those imports coming into Miami, which was, in theory, it was correct, but it never happened. So, I read the article, I went back in, finished reading it afterwards, and I just, out of the blue, I said, I'm gonna go ahead and do that, which was crazy at the time. I didn't know anything about logistics, I didn't know about transportation, I didn't know ocean, I didn't know anything. I had some money at the time, so I just said, listen, I'm gonna go ahead and do this, and then I started doing that. First month, I think I told you guys, I lost $20,000 out of my own pocket, and I had some money at the time, 20 grand. I think I was 22 when I started, either 21 or 22, and I was going crazy, But I just kind of figured out, okay, this doesn't work. I'm gonna go and, start doing this. And similar to, I don't know if any of you guys play sports, similar to boxing, I'm competitive. Yeah. So I'm just stubborn. I'm not gonna quit. I'm not gonna quit. My biggest issue, and there's a certain segment of you guys that are gonna go into business. In my case, my issue was I wasn't good at failure. So if I had a good day, my emotions were here. If I had a bad day, my emotions will go ahead and crash. So that highs and lows, the highs were too high and the lows were too low. And I just didn't know anything about the industry. Usually people that come into the industry, they've worked at a certain company and they'll go ahead and bring that knowledge into it. I just dove into it. I'm 22. I already put the money into it. I'm not backing out. And failure, I didn't have a plan B. Failure was not an option at that point. It's just sink or swim.
It's a gamble.
Like everything in life, sometimes a little bit, riskier. Sometimes it's not. But At that point, I just started going, and it took me about 2 years to kind of have an idea how I was gonna, move around. And like I said, I will work sometimes. I started building the website because I was paying somebody in India, and this is information for you guys. When you guys go and build a website, if you go to a company in the U.S., that company is paying another company in India to build a website. So I was staying overnight because of the time difference to go ahead and talk to the company in India to build a website. They weren't doing what I wanted, so I said, you know what, the heck with it. I'm gonna go ahead and do it myself. So I bought a book, got on YouTube at the time, and just figured out HTML programming, whatever it's called, and I did the website. I learned how to do that. Now I built the website myself, and I started doing that, and then just I didn't have another option, so I had to learn everything, which is why I had to go into every single mode of transportation because I was forced into it. I didn't necessarily want to, but I didn't have much of a choice. So I started doing that, and over the years, I've met people and I've learned new things, and I've crashed into the wall. And then crashing into the wall, that's usually how you learn. You learn how to solve problems. You gotta have creative thinking. Creative thinking, you gotta be resourceful. You gotta have imagination on everything you do when it comes to business. And my biggest issue was the highs were too high and the lows were too low. And everybody told me, get out of it, sell it. You don't need this. Go back to accounting. And I would think about that every single week. And I just, I didn't want to give up. I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? And at some point in time, I would say, you know what? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not gonna fail. I'm not gonna fail. I'm not gonna fail. And just kind of talk yourself into it, And in a way, you got to be a little crazy in order to do that. But sometimes crazy works. And I just kind of talked myself into it, just stuck. And then little by little, we landed a client that was doing oil projects in, I think, Panama. And then we're supplying oil projects. After that, we got into trucking. After that, we got into rail. After that, we got into cross-border with Mexico. And then now we're able to connect the dots on the modes of transportation when most people can't. Well, that's kind of a short version of my story, basically. A lot of failures, but you just got to be persistent.
All right.
I don't know if you guys have any questions.
How long have you been in the logistic business?
I started October 22nd, 2010. I even remember the day.
Wow. Going on 13 years.
Yeah, something like that.
So there's a lot of it's a competitive market for sure. So what do you think I'm assuming because you guys are involved in every mode of transportation, that's sort of what makes you stand out among the crowd?
Definitely. I think even with companies that have been in the industry for 30 years, the U.S., and I kind of explained this before, is a fragmented market. So you have the logistics industry, but they don't talk to each other. So you have the trucking, rail, ocean, and that affects what you pay for the product, what she pays. What we all pay, it affects. Usually, for example, when you buy a product, there's minimum 3 modes of transportation involved. It's the import, even the sourcing of the product, the sourcing of the plastic, the carbon to build the plastic. People don't understand that. So you're constantly trying to navigate those things, and you constantly, you're relentless competition. In my case, in particular, since we were forced to, and it happened by accident, by the way, we were forced to learn every mode of transportation. We're able to connect the dots, especially trucking, rail, and ocean. Those 3, nobody's able to connect it. For whatever the reason may be, they're just not able to. Because each industry is so big that they don't have to talk to each other. When you think about rail, you're talking about the Western movies. It's the same movies. You see, people started moving out to the West, back, cowboy era or whatever. And they were going out to the West to work on the railroad. and it was Canada Pacific and Union Pacific. So you're talking about the 1800s. It's still the same companies. And it's a real estate company. They're not trains. They bought the land. They own the land. So it was a competition between Canada Pacific and Union Pacific to see who could get to the West Coast first. And at the time, Ulysses S. Grant was the president, so he was the one that was pushing for, going out west. That's how people went out west, because they were going for work. Okay, I'm gonna go work on the road, and it's still the same companies. I got sidetracked, but I don't even know if I answered the question.
No, yeah, that you guys are the experts in every field of transportation. You guys have knowledge.
I'm not gonna say the expert in every field of transportation.
But you have the knowledge.
I am definitely the expert at connecting those dots.
Yeah.
That I do know. And then the other, I think, how do you stay up front? Now it's changing. Whatever industry you guys decide to go in, technology is just, it's taking you guys out. That's the reality of the world. You're not, once you guys graduate and you go to college and then you go to into the labor force, you guys are competing among each other, but you're competing with people out of the state and out of the country. Because if I'm an employer and I want to hire somebody, an expert in logistics, I don't have to pay I don't have to hire somebody from the U.S. I don't have to do that. They could work remote from their house. I pay them, $4 an hour. Somebody in India. That might even be better than you guys. And so when you guys go out into the labor force, it is relentless competition. And there's going to be more competition for you guys than it was for me. Because you're competing with technology. The world is connected. Now you got Zoom, you got a video camera, you have a meeting with anybody in the world. It wasn't like that in 2010. So you guys, have to develop whatever those skills are to be able to compete at the labor force. And you don't have to be the best student. You don't have to be, it's just something. You got to have something that an employers are willing to go and pay for that. You might be good at making friends. That's a skill. You might be good with numbers. That's another skill. So different companies pay for different things. You got to have something extra to do to get into the labor force. Otherwise, you're going to struggle.
Yeah. So I know we were talking a little bit earlier about how technology and robots and AI is changing the logistics field. Can you kind of get more into that and tell us how you see that robots and AI are kind of wiping out jobs, not wiping out jobs, but changing the way you see a warehouse, the way logistics.
Eventually, nobody's going to work in a warehouse.
Yeah.
Like a drone.
Nobody's going to work in a warehouse. It's going to be two people looking at the computer. Nobody's going to work. If you're a doctor, they have Teladoc now. It's a public company. So even the hospitals, they're outsourcing the medical, let's say, medical professionals, and they're outsourcing it to India. AI, technology, those systems, they're changing everything that you do. And you guys don't realize this yet, because you're not out there. But once you go out there, competition is brutal. And there's a dark side to life, and it's good to see that, because, that desperation, you need that, sometimes. You got to have that desperation. And going back to your point, is FedEx is running automated trucks, Houston, Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon, they bought Kiva, which was the robotics. They bought it, when it comes to specifically to logistics, everything is going automated. Systems, myself, now I'm putting in a new system for that. And I have to take a large amount of capital and put it into that, because I'm looking at it 10 years from now. And whatever you do and whatever career path you take, you have to look at it. Okay, 10 years from now, how is this industry going to be affected by technology? And accounting. I did accounting in school. Now you don't need that. You can go to software companies, they're digital accountants. So basically, then it's just you just upload your documents, and there's somebody in another country for 20% of the salary of somebody here that's doing everything for you. It's not just logistics. On logistics, anything, all the pick and packing, all the transportation, the warehousing, the forklift, they have automated forklift. The racking systems are automated. You don't have to do any of that. Yeah. And then from the employer side of it, looking from the employee, because you guys might say, this is not fair. Life is not fair. From the employer side of it, I don't have mistakes. I don't have liability. I don't have to worry about you being late, you being sick. And that's just the reality. So when you go out to work, you got to have something that the employer, can value. You have to generate value for me in order for me to keep you. Right? And a percentage of you is going to go into business. And when you go into business, you're going to have to make those decisions. You're going to have to spend money here, fire somebody here, and that's just the nature of and it's always changed. If you think about, the U.S. was the first country to have TVs. All TVs were manufactured in the U.S. Today, the U.S. does not manufacture one television. Not one, but everything you see on TV, it comes out of the U.S. So the industry, it changes. Before it was manufacturing, now it's just production, IP, intellectual property. So if you look at DirecTV, how many of you guys have had DirecTV in the past?
I had it.
How many people have DirecTV now?
It's all streaming services.
It's all streaming services. Yeah. They're dead. They're dead. And that's just the nature of the business. It changes. Every single industry is going to change. If you don't change with it.
Speaking about that, I wish there was a streaming service that you get all streaming services. Because I realize now that everyone says, oh, whatever, and a lot of people don't have Comcast or DirecTV or cable.
So I'm gonna give you an example of that. Netflix. They were the first ones.
Yeah.
Go online and look at the Netflix stock. Crashing.
Yeah.
Because Paramount, MGM, HBO, all these companies, Disney, they said, I'm gonna go ahead and do my own streaming services. But what happens? Netflix IP, intellectual property, doesn't own intellectual property. So they don't, let's say you take a company like MGM. They've been filming movies since, for 50 years. Everything you see on Netflix is owned by MGM. So Netflix, they have to pay a fee, licensing fees to MGM in order to show it. What did Disney do? I'm going to open up my own streaming business. If you want to watch my IP, you have to get my account. You don't have a choice. That's why Netflix is down.
But
go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. There has to be some way, bro. Because you think about it, you have Paramount Plus, then you have Paramount Regular, then you have Disney Plus, then you have there's so many now. And everyone is doing if you like Disney shows, you get.
Yeah, but if you look at it, the value on that is on the IP. So if you think about Paramount, Universal, MGM, these are the companies that make the movies, that have been making the movies.
Yeah, for years.
For years. So when you open up, an account with them, you have all of that.
Yeah.
If you go on Netflix and they start taking all those, licenses or shows from Netflix, then Netflix, that's why they have to go in and create more movie screen, and they have to sell it. But it's competition. Once they, whatever, industry you go in and it works, it's competition. Tesla was the first one on autonomous vehicles.
Now Chevy's doing it.
Chevy's doing it.
Chevy's doing it even on their gas cars. If you get
it's competition. It's competition on everything you do.
Yeah, it's just someone comes up with an idea, and now automatically everyone is getting onto that idea, and they're improving it.
And there's no sympathy.
We were on the Tesla thing. Tesla was the first one that said about autonomous. Well, the first one that I heard. I'm sure some other people are working on it, but the first people that I heard about autonomous trucks, Tesla still hasn't come out with an autonomous semi truck, but Kodiak, we were talking about it earlier. It came out with a system that you put it on your existing truck. You don't even have to buy a new truck, and it drives itself.
So what do you think that's gonna do to the trucking industry? All these people that were okay, I'm gonna be a truck driver. You know, they have to leave that market. Yeah. So they're gonna go into your market and compete with you because they don't have a choice. You know, so you're gonna have more competition. You know, same thing with McDonald's. They're already doing robotics at McDonald's. So all these people that before would go to McDonald's and work, they don't have a choice. They have to move to your industry and compete.
I was reading about a company the other day, and it said they have a robot arm that goes on top of a grill, and it cooks for you. And what it says is there's no, the burger's cooked to 130 degrees, whatever the degrees internal every time. There's no mistakes. That's what it brings to the consumer. You don't, like you said, you don't have a 6-day. You don't feel bad. You don't have vacation days. It works 365 days a year, 24 hours a day if you really want. 7 days a week.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly how it works.
Yeah.
And it's expensive, but it's cheaper than.
And trade and logistics, it applies to everything you do.
Yeah.
Every single thing you do. When you go to a hospital, they have a purchasing department. That is supply chain management.
So funny that you mentioned that. And we always say like trade and logistics was an overlooked market or industry until COVID came around. Because nobody knew what trade and logistics was. And then COVID comes and everyone's like, oh, who are we? When we need something and the whole world shut down, they're like, oh, who do we talk to? Trade and logistics. So for a long time, it was like kind of the underdog in the industry.
And there's a misconception, so when you say logistics, it's, so if you look at it as a broad range, supply chain management,
yeah.
You have planning, you have purchasing, you have production, you have transportation and logistics,
yeah.
And then you have sales. All of that is a circle. It feeds onto each other, And the logistics side of it is knowledge that you could apply to it. So if you're in purchasing or you're running purchasing for Nike, you got to know about logistics. Because determining the logistics is the cost of her sweater, your Alabama sweater, the FIU sweater, everything that you pay for, there's cost in it. Cost of production, cost of fuel. On that sweater, there's minimum 3 charges on fuel on that sweater that you pay for. And people don't factor that in. So the cost of fuel affects everything, the production. Because in order to produce, you got to get the materials. So if the cost of fuel is high, you got to pay for the vessel, the shipping container. And there's a cost of fuel based on that. But once you get it and you got to deliver the container to the factory, there's a cost for the fuel on that transportation. And on the shipping to the consumer, there's a cost of fuel for that. So there's cost on everything. So trade and logistics, it allows you to see behind the curtain on how the economy moves. That's what moves the world. You want to look at the economy? Look how transportation. Look at the logistics side of it. What are people buying? If it's not moving, it's because people are not buying. So that's just it connects into everything. They say supply chain management is about 25% of the global GDP. So you could take some of that knowledge and just apply it to anything. You could be at the NBA, working for the NBA, and you need to know about logistics. You need to be able to coordinate.
What would you say, what skills are important to be successful in the industry?
That's an excellent question. If you ask me, creative thinking, resourceful, and depends on what section of the industry you go to. Good, you got to be good with people. Problem solving. You see, I didn't give you numbers. You don't have to be, grammar. You don't have to have any of that.
Yeah.
Usually, logistics. I did the course with Georgia Tech on supply chain management, and I just wanted to get that degree. But it's theory. It's not practical, you know. So I would say imagination, creative thinking, problem solving. Those are the things that, you know, you don't have to be the best student. You know, those are skills that you have to develop. You have to be able to communicate with people, you know. And my FedEx rep, they do about 150 grand a year. They don't do anything. What I mean, they come to the office, drink coffee, and just hang out. And then afterwards, they're there for like an hour and a half. They leave and go to another office and just hang out. And their job is to build relationships. So companies will go ahead and pay for those skills. You know, you just gotta figure out what skills, and everybody has something different. What skills do you have that you think you're good at? If you're good at making friends, other people are not. Other people are not able to be personal. You know, companies will go ahead and pay for that. You just gotta have something, and everybody has something. If you go with numbers, you go into operations. It might not be my thing, but it's somebody else's. You know, so for logistics, creative thinking, imagination, problem solving, and communication. Those are the four that come to mind. The people that I only have out of 21, I only have one person that graduated from logistics. I have an architect, the head of trucking, she did marketing, but you learn it as you go. And a lot of the times in school, I sat through the case study for University of Miami for the MBA program. You know, they're clueless. It's the reality, you know. You can't really teach that. You have to go and work it, you know. You have to go and work it. And regardless of whatever you decide to do, the way that you study accounting, it's not the way that you work accounting a lot of the times. You know, so you have to go out into the field and, you know, and do.
What products do you most commonly move, and what are the supply chains for those?
I mean, that's a tough question because we move all types of products. I could give you specifics, you know. For example, I'm trying to think something complicated to go ahead and give it to you. You know, so we move. If you look, I don't know if you've seen on TV the big oil tanks.
Yeah.
Where they store the oil.
Yeah.
So we move those tanks. So basically, those tanks are assembled, or the manufacturer is in Allentown, PA. So I'm gonna break it down so you can understand how it works. So my client is a company in Germany and Spain. They don't manufacture the tanks. They don't even design it. They're just an engineering company, and they sell the tanks. So they say that they manufacture, you know. And then basically they sell to Latin America and Africa, and they say they're selling to Ghana, you know. So they're selling to Ghana, you know Ghana, right?
Yeah.
Country.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're selling to Ghana as if they manufacture, but they don't. They manufacture in Allentown, PA, and out of Allentown, PA, we ship it to Ghana. And those tanks, you know, as you can see, they're massive. You know, they're shipped by parts. You know, they're metal sheets, aluminum sheets, and those aluminum sheets, they go inside of a container, and then, you know, they're assembled in Ghana, basically. That's just one of them. You know, out of that, you know, I could go through a million examples. You know.
Are they flat sheets or are they already curved?
Some of them are curved, some of them are flat.
So obviously it would be ship a flat sheet.
But a flat sheet could be, let's say, half of the table. You know, so they're loaded onto a container.
Yeah.
You know.
And so does the factory that's manufacturing or that's selling those sheets, do they send someone to assemble them over there, or they just let Ghana assemble them?
No, the engineer, like I said, they're an engineering company. So they basically, what they do is they design the plan and the foundation for the tanks, and then they send an engineering team to Ghana to go ahead and, you know, advise with the assembly of the tanks, and they give them the plans.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how they do it. And I could go through a million examples of something like that. But it's just too broad. I think if you narrow it down, it's gonna be able. I could go ahead and give you a little bit more.
And so you're getting it from PA. What is the transport on that? You put it on a truck.
Allentown, PA. So basically,
It's not close to any port.
It's not close to any port. So it goes out of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So basically, we do the booking with the ocean carrier, which is the shipping vessel, and our booking is to the door of the manufacturer. So in my contract, the shipping vessel is responsible for moving the truck and picking it up. I'd rather do it like that because I don't pay congestion fees, any delays with the container. I don't have any issues with that. So it's just less work for me. And in our system, we're able to track the container via GPS as it moves through all over the world, basically. So I'm able to go in every single day and see where the vessel is located.
Okay.
So that's basically how it moves.
So then it goes from Philadelphia to Ghana.
I could give you an example. I'm gonna go ahead and give you an example. A lot of auto parts that come in from Germany. Let's say you have a Mercedes. A lot of that is coming in from Germany. So anything that comes in from Germany, specifically now, is coming in through Halifax. Halifax is Nova Scotia in Canada. So you got Toronto, north of Toronto is Halifax. So in Halifax, it comes in through the port of Halifax and it moves on rail, on the train, to Chicago. And it goes into Chicago because Chicago works as a distribution point for the U.S. It's in the middle of the country, so you're able to service both East and West Coast. So that's another example. But depending on the product, it moves in a specific way. It comes in through a specific port. Everything moves differently.
I wanted to ask, how do you decide the way that something will travel? Is it like by weight? Like cars versus the metal sheets for the oil
By
tanks?
the way that it travels, you say in the mode of transportation,
Yeah, the mode of
or the port
transportation.
that it's going to go into.
The mode of transportation.
Mode of transportation, certain commodities move a certain way. Usually, for example, if it's something medicine, pharmaceutical, a high value, it's going to move air freight because they just want it quick. Heavier or large quantities, you got to move on ocean freight because nobody wants to pay the air freight on certain things. But let's say pharmaceuticals, laptops, electronics, microchips, it's gonna move air freight every single time. They want to hear now.
How about how you mentioned this? How do you know which port it's gonna come into? Like how do you?
So the port is determined depending on the origin and the final destination.
Okay.
Like I said, most of what comes into the port, it doesn't stay on the coast. It's gonna move inward into the U.S.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I'm bringing something from China, and I gotta take it to a DC distribution center, and most likely my distribution center is in Kansas City. I'm not gonna ship it to. I ship it to a rail port.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, I'm gonna ship to the rail terminal, not the seaport. Now, the ocean carrier is gonna determine, whatever port they want to use. But let's say that you want to ship to the seaport. It really all depends where it's coming from. Let's say if it's coming from the Pacific, from Asia, it's gonna go into the first coast for the most part.
Good.
If it's coming from Europe, it's gonna come into the East Coast. Now, Asia now, you could bring it into the East Coast. So it really all depends on the origin and the final destination.
And so during COVID, when the ports on the West Coast were shut down for the majority, were we getting a lot? There was a lot of freight coming in through the Panama Canal and into the East Coast.
Yeah. So what happened is nobody wanted to ship to California. Yeah. California is bad for business. You have too many regulations. That's why if you go to California, I think fuel in California,
Like $6,
It's
$7.
like $6, $7.
You have regulations on diesel, you have regulations on the transportation, and all that. It's just you're taking all these companies or trucking companies that want to get the service, You're taking them out of the market, and they don't want to go to California. So you have supply and demand. You have a lesser supply, so you have a higher demand, meaning the cost of transportation and doing business in California just goes up. During COVID, it was coming into the East Coast because of the large congestion in the Port of Long Beach. So what happens is you have so many containers coming in that they were stacked 6 high. So they'll go ahead and start stacking the containers one on top of each other. Problem is that once a truck comes in to pick up a container, usually the one that they're picking up is the one at the bottom, which is the first one that was there. So they have to move 6 containers in order to get the one at the bottom. So the process to be able to get a container out, it was just too slow. So you have more freight coming in than going out. Outside the warehouses were full. It wasn't just that, but it was a combination of everything basically.
Yeah.
Now what companies are doing because of the supply chain, so they're buying more. So before, let's say they had to buy 50,000 units after COVID, now they're buying 100,000 because they don't want to have the issues on the supply chain and they don't want to go through that.
They rather have more stock sitting in a warehouse.
But which is bad for us because that company, when they're buying 100,000 units,
takes them a while to sell.
It takes them a while to sell, and they're paying storage. So meaning that cost for the storage, we pay for it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just what it is right now. And
do you ever see it going back or no?
Maybe.
Do you move hazmat? If so, what shipping do you use?
Chemicals. So most of the hazmat that we move is for a distribution center that they do contract warehousing, in New Orleans. So I'm not sure exactly what type of chemicals they are. They're just hazmat. I think they use chemicals for the oil industry. I'm not sure exactly what they do, but it comes in from Brazil into New Orleans.
Is there any special? Okay, when you're moving hazmat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you move hazmat with other freight too, or it has to be in its own boat, or how does it work?
By boat, it's on the per container. Now once you put it on a truck, the whole truck is considered hazmat.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't just be mixing the freight.
Okay.
That's not how it works. So if you move hazmat, it's a dedicated truck for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, how do you for logistics, right? How do you distribute a car, a big group of cars to the United States from another place? How does that work? Do you just take it on a ship and then from there, what do you do?
For cars?
Yeah, for cars, or anything big in general.
Okay, cars is not necessarily big.
Mm-hmm.
So cars, for example, me personally, I will move it on the rail. So the rail cars, they have cars specifically that go on the rail that are for cars that you load them in. So if it's overweight, overdimensioned, let's say you have to move something that is just very large, you got to take out permits,
Mm-hmm.
and the permits you got to take out permits per municipality that it has to travel to.
Okay.
So that one's, you have some cities you have restrictions on weight, some cities you have the restriction on sizes, meaning that you have to go around that city. So you have to draw out the lane or trace the route, and then basically on that, deliver it. There's another thing, it's called barge. So you put it on the rivers, so chemicals, wheat, that kind of thing, commodities. It goes on barge or rail.
So speaking about overweight, oversized. So in trucking, when you have an oversized load, let's say you have to something that you might even have to use a Jeep axle because it's too long.
Mm-hmm.
Each axle could carry 20,000 pounds.
Okay.
Right. So we're talking something, I don't know, 110,000 pounds. So
okay.
Whatever, how many axles you need. You need the pilot cars, but what are the other steps that you need to take in place? Who do you have to call? Do you have to inform the DOT? Do you have to get special permits? How does that work?
You take the permits. For the permits, you take them out to the city. with the
Okay.
city.
with the city.
Yeah,
And
the
but when
city's
you're passing, like it's
it's passing through Miami-Dade County.
Yeah.
So I need a permit from Miami-Dade County.
yeah.
And I'm sure you guys seen it. Oversized load, and there's probably a
pilot
escort.
car.
It goes with escort. Sometimes it has to be police escort.
Yeah.
And then basically you take out the permits with the city. The city's gonna tell you, we need this or we don't need this. So each city, they call them municipalities, they're operating and individually.
Yeah.
So the restrictions in New York City are different than Miami. Miami is different than Dallas. Dallas is different than Savannah, and it varies.
Yeah.
And obviously, you want to do the route through the city with the less restriction. Usually urban cities, you have a lot more restrictions because more people, more cars, you have certain limitations.
Have you ever had? There's a question. Have you ever had to do a tandem powerhead load, like something that's so heavy that you need two? You've ever seen when they have the two trucks joined together and like
We haven't had to do any of that.
no
No,
tandem?
not yet.
Oh, that's cool. I don't know. It was just a question.
Not yet.
Can you please explain foreign trade zones and do you use them?
I like your questions. Okay, FTZ zones. We're actually in the process of we're in the process of starting to become an FTZ zone. So FTZ zones are basically that you're able to bring in your goods and not necessarily do the customs clearance or not pay the duties on those items. So you pay the duties once they go out. So let's say if I bring 1,000 units, I don't want to pay the duties on 1,000 units, and I'll do the order fulfillment out of that FTZ zone. I'll pay the duties once the order is placed. So once they leave, so you don't have to pay those duties, before. So basically, you could have them there, and you could store the goods without having to pay the duties. It's a popular thing now, and it's going even more.
Isn't Miami International trying to become an FTZ zone?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
And Miami is a big thing. I'll say Miami's probably one of the biggest markets for FTZ because a lot of the freight, so for example, if you're bringing, if you want to ship to a company in Brazil, for example, Brazil might not be the best. Let's use Ecuador, for example. Miami works as a distribution center for Latin America. So if you're a company in Ecuador and you want to move freight from China, a lot of the times the freight comes into the U.S. and then goes to China. Because the volume of freight that's coming into the U.S. is a lot bigger than what's going into China. That's what's going into Ecuador. So the cost is, supply and demand. You have more demand, which is going to drive the price. More supply, which is going to drive the price down because you have more freight coming into the U.S. So FTZ on that aspect is a really big thing in Miami. So there's a lot of growth on the FTZ side. The rest of the U.S. not so much.
Really?
I would say on the FTZ side, I'll say the border with Mexico. That's number 2 because that's the majority of the freight or the trade.
Have you ever moved? I don't know why, but this is such a big. Talking about Mexico, I didn't know. I was reading an article the other day. The amount of avocados that we get imported from Mexico from the U.S. from Mexico to the U.S. It's like one of their biggest exports.
All of it basically. Before, California was a supplier of avocado, but what happened is apparently avocado is very sensitive to temperature.
Yeah,
it's very
moisture.
sensitive. So you need a specific type of climate, and California, the state of California, was only able to produce avocados during a certain time, a certain season of the year. Mexico, especially on the West Coast, they're able to do it year round. So the avocado industry in Mexico is massive, 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 and all of it, the best avocados come to the U.S. That's because we're the consumers. We have the money. So everybody's trying to sell to us. But the avocado industry is huge. It's so big that in Mexico, there's wars internally, cartels and whatever that may be, over avocado farms. That's how big it is.
To bring it back to FTZ zones for a second, what would be the difference between an FTZ zone and then a bonded warehouse? What are those? What's like the difference?
So
What
bonded is
underlies-
usually in transit. I'm shipping bonded in transit. So let's say if I'm shipping to, let's use an example. Let's say I'm shipping from Mexico to Canada. I have to go into a bonded warehouse at the border to do a transload to ship into. So bonded is in transit. So once you do a bonded document, it has the final destination. That the final destination is going to be Canada. So bonded it has to have the final destination.
Yeah, instead of FTZ.
Exactly. And you guys go ahead.
At the beginning, you said you had multiple failures in your life, like when you started the business. What was the biggest lesson you learned from that?
Things are never as good as they seem, and they're never as bad as they seem. It's usually somewhere in the middle. Don't let your emotions go up and down. That's really bad. You try to stay balanced at everything you do. Don't let the highs be too high. Don't get too excited, and the lows don't let it destroy you. So and the other thing is you gotta keep going. Whatever you do, you just keep going, every single time.
Do you work with any companies directly, or do you just like ship internationally?
No, I mean most of my client base is American companies. So the big distribution centers, they do contract warehousing for Nike, for General Mills, for Johnson & Johnson, that kind of thing. That's the majority of the volume that I move. A lot of Mexico, but mostly U.S. companies.
What's the difference between a custom broker and a freight forwarder?
Broker, they do the import, the customs clearance. Customs broker, they do. Freight forwarder is basically I'm forwarding the freight. I'm shipping international. That's the best way I could put it. So I'm doing the international shipping. Let's say I have the contract for the ocean freight, to ship on the shipping vessel, and then I ship it. Customs broker, they basically, once you do an import, they do the customs clearance. So they get it out of customs, and they basically, do all the documentation process that you could go ahead and get your goods. But freight forwarding, and again, freight forwarding, it varies depending on the freight forwarding. For example, if you go to Laredo, Texas, which is on the border with Mexico, freight forwarding for them is just transloading. That's their definition. But for the most part, it's international shipping. I do air freight, ocean freight. That's freight forwarding. I'm shipping it to you. I'm forwarding the goods to you. I'm shipping it. Anything that's international shipping.
All right. So I guess that's it. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully you guys picked up something new.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.